Hi, guys. Thanks for joining me for a new episode of Champion of the Soul. I'm your host, Eric Ashton Spooner, and I'm so happy that you've joined me today for a new episode of exploring, deep diving, revelation, information into the realm of spirituality, mental health, and self-discovery. I'm so glad that you've joined me today. I'm also happy that a lot of you have started to subscribe, hit that like button, make comments, share your own stories, and really get into the subject material that we've been sharing in this series of Champion of the Soul. So I'm so personally happy and grateful that you guys have joined with me in this journey, and thankful that you guys have joined me for this new episode. Last week, we took a deep dive into something that was very, I would say, controversial, a rare subject to discuss. And in last week's episode, we discussed a subject called vulnerability in manhood. And that subject came to me really just as an idea, but really that was just a phrase that I could really use to explain some of the places in my own soul, in my own heart, in my own spirit, things that were happening inside of me, and that I knew that other men were encountering and suffering and dealing with, but just didn't have the terminology or the language to really explain or open up and talk about how they really felt. And so I decided to do that episode last week called Vulnerability in Manhood. And I received a lot of comments and messages from different guys all over the country, and even outside of the country, of course. And it's a subject that's very close to me, obviously. But I knew I had to just take it a little deeper. And this is something that you can't really get over. You know, you can't really discuss this in one episode. You really have to just really deep dive into it. So I decided that this week I wanted to do Vulnerability in Manhood Part 2. And in today's episode, I want to just take it a little further and just look a little bit deeper into some of the things or the thought process or what's going on in the minds and the hearts and the souls of men. And so today in part 2, we're going to be analyzing the thoughts of men. And so I'm going to just review some of the comments that have come to me from different guys of different backgrounds, races, ethnicities, socioeconomic backgrounds, and statuses. And so I just want to look at that, and let's really take a look at it. And I want to start a really deep conversation beyond this episode. I want us to really engage with this in social media and in podcast land and across the globe. I want us to really open up this conversation and be a catalyst for healing. And so last week, I touched on some of the things that were really pertinent in this subject. And I mentioned about suicide and suicide prevention, and the fact that 80% of men, when they get to the middle age of their lives, that's ages 40 to 55, they start to have basically there's an 80% rate of men committing suicide in that age group. Now, since the pandemic, there have been other studies and surveys that have seen that amongst men of color. Now, normally the statistic I just read, that's 80%, it's majority white males that they stated that were in that particular category. But when I looked a little deeper and I started to look, and I said, since the pandemic, there's been new surveys and new studies that have come out showing that men of color, in particular black men, are committing suicide at astronomical rates that are starting to escalate. And this is something that has been shown in our recent studies from 2020, 2021, up till now in 2022. And so last week, I started to touch on the emergency state that we've been in as men, and much of society and much of religion and much of government and every system that men work in, and we, the families, the neighborhoods, the communities of our world are not discussing it. It's not a subject that people touch on. It's not something that people take seriously. is not something really that I feel like men have always ever had the permission to be able to discuss and to be free to discuss. And so I know that it's an emergency that we cover this type of material, because otherwise, why would we have these type of numbers in the area of suicide that we have? And that's just one area, suicide. There's so many divorces and broken relationships, and men who are struggling in their mental health, who don't have a place to go for support, don't have a place to go to speak, or just are more likely than not afraid to open up and afraid to admit, or afraid to go get support or therapy for whatever emotional, mental, spiritual issues that are happening to them. And so my hope and my prayer and my intention in this series, in this episode, really is to crack open the hearts of men, crack open the dark places, the corridors of their soul that are unspoken, that have never been broken up, that have never been opened up, and cause men to have real conversations that can really bring some real healing to the real core of our souls, and to the real places that have been broken, and to the places that have been hidden and closed and shut down for so many years. So I wanted to recap last week's episode. So if you haven't seen it, I want you to go back and watch that episode in full and make your comments. And I want to hear from you concerning what you heard on last week's episode of Vulnerability and Manhood. And so in my continuation on this subject, and this is a very tough subject to cover. This is not for the faint of heart. This is not me talking about the latest celebrity gossip. This is not me talking about money, anything like that. I am talking about the human soul, the heart of a man, the inner corridors of the soul, the things that are not spoken and talked about. These are the areas where the pain rests and lies. And so I've heard from a lot of men of all age groups, and I have my personal take on the subject. And today I want to give just maybe about 10 areas or 10 keys, I would say maybe, to a man's soul. And these are areas that I think that what are some of the things that men need in their for their soul? I have about 10 things that I think men need for their soul at all times. And this is a short list of 10, but I have more that can even go deeper than this. But I think for this setting, these are my 10. And so I'm going to cover those 10 for you in this episode. And I really want you to tell me what you think, make some comments and send me some messages and let me know your thoughts about this. And tell me if the men in your life or the man who's listening to this directly, do you have these 10 things operating in your life? Do you have them at all? And so let's jump into this now, this part 2 of Vulnerability and Manhood. As sensitive of a subject as it is, the heart of a man, it's a very deep well to travel down. And I've done my own research, obviously, and I found a large amount of articles, publications, blogs, and everyone that I seem to come across, they all name things about that a man should have. They named activities, performance. These are things that were all related to performance that I found that they said about men. These are things that they thought that men should have or men should be. And of course, those things included, protect, provide, loyalty, money, work, all of those things. And all those things are very much true. However, I would say that I want to look into the hearts of men to see what does it take for a man to just be. And that is really my view when I look at this subject, and I'm saying, okay, if I'm looking at a man and I'm looking at, his soul, I'm looking at his soul. I'm not thinking about how much money he has. I'm not thinking about where he works, what kind of car he drives, his socioeconomic status, if he's married, what success or whatever he's attained in life. Those are not really the areas that I'm really going after when I look at a man's soul. When I look at a man's soul, I'm like, what does it take for this man to just be? Just be. What is it that takes for just that one word, be? Just stand alone. And so I'm looking at that and I'm like, wow, this is, from a societal standpoint, men are expected to produce, provide, protect, perform. That would be the essence of the core of what I see from a societal standpoint. It's constantly in a go. It's constantly in a work mode. It's constantly in a state of, doing something, performing something. And so there's a constant competition or a constant work or struggle or force or labor associated with being a man from a societal standpoint. But I believe that God never intended for man to only work from a performance standpoint. A man's first place of wholeness is from a spiritual place. It's just being. It's just a man's place of just being. And that being is one with God, one with himself, and at peace with himself, without any performance, without any work, any of those external things. The man has to be able to just be whole within himself, for himself at all times. And so when I look at that, and remember, I'm talking about the soul. I'm not talking about external things. I'm not talking about material things. I'm not talking about performance. I'm talking about a healing and a restoration of a man to his own soul. And so I want to talk about these 10 things. These are my 10. Now, there's other people out there who have other keys and other strategies, which are all great. But these are my 10 that I want to just jump into. And after I jump into these, of course, you guys can comment and make your comments in the comment section, of course. But I want to start to read off some of the questions that were sent to me by different men from all over the country. And so what are some of the things that a man needs in his own soul, for his soul? The first thing that I stated that a man needs, and these, and I emphatically believe all 10 of these that I've stated, that I'm going to state here. The first thing that a man needs for his soul, he needs unconditional love. Unconditional love. The unconditional love that a man knows that he has in his soul and his mind will protect him and rescue him from many atrocities. It will protect him from a life of addiction. It will protect him from the wrong relationships. When you know that you are unconditionally loved by someone in your life, it is an extreme protection for your soul. It is an extreme assurance for your soul. There's nothing like being unconditionally loved. Many people will say, love you. I love you. Oh, I love you. I love you if you do this or if you this. But unconditional love just says, I am unconditionally in love with you. I love you no matter what. A man needs that for his soul. That's the first thing. And I'm going to culminate my 10 with that unconditional love, because I do believe that is the optimum place for this 10. My number 2, I would say, would be mentorship. Mentorship is super important because a man has to be guided. As a young boy, as a young man going through adolescence and young adulthood and teenage years, when you're forming into something, a man needs mentorship because he needs guidance to get on that path that he's supposed to get on. And without that proper guidance and mentorship, to bring clarity to his identity and bring clarity to his calling and his purpose, and to show him really who he is and what he can do. That support system, it could literally leave a man bankrupt, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. Literally can leave him bankrupt without the proper mentorship and guidance in his life. And that could come from a multiple of relationships. That can come from anybody. Anybody can mentor a man. And, I'll get into that later, but I really do believe that anybody can speak the right word to a man. It could be a female. It could be anybody that can speak the right words to him that will give him the strength and the support and the assurance of who he is. So mentorship is critical. Number 3, I would say, is a relationship with God. And obviously, I can speak for myself when I say, in the absence of what I did not get from others in my life, my relationship with God did give me unconditional love, did validate who I was. It did give me mentorship through the Holy Spirit. It did define who I was and give me confidence. All of that happened for me in my relationship with God. So I never was alone. See, there's so many men out there who may be alone in so many situations, especially emotionally, mentally. You're not alone. If you're in partnership with God, you're not alone. If you have a relationship with God, you're not alone. And so that was my support. That was my grooming. That was my training, so to speak. It all came in my relationship with God. So that is a key thing. A true man cannot be successful without a relationship with God. You're not going to make it to the level of success and potential of that your life could reach without that. And that is very much a true fact. I would say number 4, would be a knowledge and a revelation of self. Every man needs a revelation and knowledge of self. This is critical because there's many young boys out there who are falling into what you would call societal traps. They're falling into gangs and the wrong crowd. They end up in juvenile system, and then the court system, and then it's prison, and then it's in and out of this and in and out of that. And whatever is in those small groups, whether it's a gang or whatever that is, they are picking up all of the culture that comes along with that. The drugs, the alcohol, the violence, the pain, whatever it is, they're picking up all of that. And whatever they're getting from that, some of them may be getting a sense of self, a sense of identity, a sense of support. That's all a misdirected, misguided person who's looking for themselves, and they're looking to be guided to find themselves, and they're looking for that. So I would say for sure, every man needs a knowledge and a revelation of himself. And that doesn't happen in the school system. It's not going to happen. Sadly, it's not going to happen in many churches or synagogues. It's not going to happen in regular society. It's not going to happen on social media. You must come into a knowledge and a revelation of self. And that is going to be critical. And I always tell people I say, so many people worry about walking alone in certain paths, but if you're walking in your purpose and you're walking according to your divine calling, you're not alone in that path. You are being supported heavily by God on that path by yourself. So you're not alone on that path. You're on the path to your correct self-discovery and self-revelation. So that's a key thing to know for sure. Every man needs a knowledge and revelation of himself. Let's see. What's number 5? This is my number 5. I would say every man needs a support system, and that could be his brothers, his friends, or confidants. So every man needs somebody that he can say, this is my brother who I can trust with anything. This is my confidant, or this is my friend who I can trust with anything. Every man needs that. And without that, there's a huge level of support and confidence and companionship. There's a lot of things that are missing that will hinder you from getting to your full potential without those type of relationships in your life. Nobody makes it alone. You need your brothers, your friends, or confidants. A confidant is somebody who you can literally strip yourself down, really just be emotionally transparent with, be naked with, and just tell them anything, and know that it's in a safe place. And so that's very important for every man to have. And a man who doesn't have those type of relationships, you're going to see a breakdown somewhere, whether it's going to be mental, emotional, relational. There is a breakdown taking place, whether it's seen or unseen, because we don't always see every breakdown when it starts. But there is definitely going to be a breakdown there until those type of relationships come into that person's life. So where are we now? We're at number 6. My number 6 is similar to number 5. And I would say number 6 would be, every man needs a no judgment zone. A no judgment zone. This is a safe place to speak and just talk and be heard. So obviously that's similar to, what you would do with your brothers, your friends, your confidant. These are people who you would do that with. Now, when I say a no judgment zone, it's very important that people not generalize that term, no judgment zone. No judgment zone is literally what it says. There should be no judgment. And a man needs a safe place. And a safe place is not just a place of confidentiality. A safe place is a place of emotional safety, spiritual safety, mental safety, and just plain out safety. Because somebody can tell you that, it's no judgment zone. And then, but that's depending on what you say. No, if it's a true no judgment zone, then there's no judgment, no matter what you say. And so I'm a strong, advocate for this because, that term confidentiality has been thrown around so much over the years, and so many people have been betrayed, and and there's been so much betrayal and conflict with that word confidentiality not being used properly, and just people not being trustworthy. And so it's very important that a man has a no judgment zone, a safe place to speak, for him to talk and be heard. So, whether that's therapy or whether that's your best friend or whether that's your confidant, whoever that person is, this is the place, and for me personally, I prefer men have other men for this because I prefer that, if a man needs this safe place to go to, it's done with another man that can be trusted and that can be a safe place for him, that can more heavily understand where he's coming from. Not that it couldn't be done by a woman or a young lady. However, it's very important that we understand that men go through certain things that women may not quite understand at times. And it's very important that emotional trust is not broken. That emotional trust is always 100% safe and no judgment. So that was my number 6. My number 7 would be, every man needs someone to push him into his potential and greatness. This is so important because from my perspective, I believe that society teaches so many people how to be mediocre. As long as you have a house, as long as you have a car, if you have this type of job, then you're fine. But And then we settle for what society says is successful. But the truth is, your success is really can't be graded or judged by any one person. And the reason why is because your success was judged by God from the day you were born, and it was put inside of your soul. And only you know your own potential and what you're able to create and manifest through your own hands and through your own gifts and talents and abilities. No school or person or government or society can dictate to you what is actually inside of you and what God put inside of you. So I tell people, I'm like, listen, men need to be pushed into their potential and their greatness. But what is that exactly? Only that person can quantify and look inside of themselves to see what they are capable of producing and doing. Only that person can tell you, this is what I want to do. This is what my vision is. And this is what I'm capable of. And sometimes we don't know what we're capable of. But that's why I say we need someone who can identify and see something inside of us that's greater than what's there on the surface and begin to push us into that place of greatness. And it's somebody who is able to see beyond what you're doing right now. That's somebody who's able to see beyond the fact that you may only be, a teacher's aide or a janitor, or, you may only be doing small things at the moment. But that is not the totality of what you are potentially able to produce and do. And when a person is actually able to see that inside of you, I mean, genuinely, honestly, spiritually able to identify something else inside of you, and they begin to push you there, you want to keep that person in your life, because that's a person who is literally going to be a key to your success. You need people to push you into your greatness and your potential. So that was my number 7. My number 8 would be, and this is a big one. Now, number 8 is big because it's caused a lot of issues in the world, and some of us have them and some of us don't. And some of us have them without the right emotional connection and support. And it's caused a lot of issues in the world. I will say that much. But number 8, this is my number 8. Every man needs a father or a father figure's support and wisdom. And I know that's like a weighted statement, but, this is intrinsically, internally, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, anatomically. This is so true on so many levels for so many men, for so many of us. We do need fathers. You do need a father figure who can support you and give you their wisdom. Because how can a 10-year-old child know where they're going? How can a 21-year-old young man see into the future or see what he's capable of or see the track? You know what I mean? So it's very important. And that support and that wisdom and that touch and that affirmation from a father or a father figure is critical to the pathway and the track and the sustaining of the path for any man or any young man, if he's going to be successful in life. And I say that with so much conviction because it's so true. My number 9, every man needs a challenge that is comparable to his potential. I really do believe that statement. Every man needs a challenge, because every man see the masculinity and the testosterone and all of the, the push and the performance and the competition and the status and the this and all of that. It's really just the external. That's just the surface reactions to what a man intrinsically needs. And it's a challenge. And a true man is not afraid of a challenge. Now, when I say a challenge, I'm not talking about games. I'm not talking about frivolity. I'm not talking about whims. I'm talking about a challenge, and that challenge is directly comparable to his potential. And that's the difference. Every man has his own potential. Every man has his own level of potential. Every man is not the same. You cannot compare one man to another. That's very important to know. You cannot compare one man to another. And so when we look at this, I'm saying, okay, a man needs a challenge. Don't diminish his manhood and don't want to challenge him. Oh no, we're not saying that. This man needs to be challenged, but it's comparable to his potential. And that's something that he has to want to know. And that's something that he has to desire. And so for sure, a challenge is something that every man needs. That was my number 9. This is my last one. Number 10, I would say for sure, every man needs this one simple thing, guys. And please don't take this lightly. And it's a very simple word that we all use all the time. And people throw this word around all over the world. Every man needs forgiveness. And we need true forgiveness, because being a man is not an easy job to do. And if you don't understand, what forgiveness is, you can destroy a man with your words, with your actions, with so many things. Society has so many things. And I talk about, and I'm talking to all men. When I talk about, in particular, to men of color, we have a situation where we have even more stereotypical things and even more stigmas and labels attached to us to limit us and to diminish us. Every man needs forgiveness. We need forgiveness. Every man needs forgiveness. Every human being needs forgiveness, however, but every man in this situation that I'm talking about definitely needs that word forgiveness. And so I want to let us just marinate on this, look at these 10, and these are the 10 that I would say are my 10. So these are my 10, and we can discuss this even further. I have more. I'll stop there with the 10 lists, but I want to jump into really quickly. These are some of the questions that have come to me from around the country from different men and their perspectives on manhood, masculinity, vulnerability, the things that men are just afraid to ask, talk about, etc. So this is the first question that came to me. And the first question is, what is manhood? And I think we tried to define the answer to that question in last week's episode. But we've came to discover that even society doesn't have a clear answer on what the term manhood means. And then I've had, obviously, someone send this question to me because they said, well, I'm not quite sure what it means. I'm not quite sure what that term means. And so I'm going to throw these questions out. I'm not going to try to answer all of them in this episode. I'll give us more liberty in the comment section and in some other formats to go deeper into some of these questions. But I do want to bring them out so that we can discuss them further. So that was the first one that came to me. What is manhood? Here's another question, or statement rather. A man sent me, he said, opening up to some women is to later have that woman use it against you as leverage in an argument. So this particular guy, he sent me this statement saying, it's hard to be vulnerable because opening up to some women to later have that woman use it against you as leverage in an argument. Yeah. So obviously that kind of connects to one of my 10 points on what a man needs. And, if a man can't trust, if you don't have a safe place, if you don't have trust, and if the woman does take the information that you trusted her with and she abuses that trust and she betrays you by throwing it back in your face later, then what that woman has to understand is she has literally closed the door to that man's soul ever opening up to her ever again. And many women may not understand that. That's the sensitivity to the doors of a man's soul that I don't think a lot of women quite fully understand when they do something like that. When they throw back sensitive information into a man's face that he trusted you with. And this same person, he sent me in reference to a question on masculinity. He says, why women treat their gay male friends like gold while being assholes to hetero men. Okay. So that's a funny one. So this is an honest question. He's asking that question. He says, why women treat their gay male friends like gold while being assholes to heterosexual men. That question I don't have an answer for, but that's one you guys could probably answer in the comment section, because that someone asked that question. They want to know that. What is the key to understanding what that is? And if one person asks a question, then there has to be thousands of people who want to know the answers to the same question. So it's important that we try to answer some of these. So I'm gonna give you guys liberty to go ahead and put those in the comment section and give your opinion on these interesting questions that I've received. Let's look at another question I received. It says, what are the results of being raised by the mother when there is no father in the household? Interesting. Now that goes back to one of my 10 keys of what a man needs too. When there is no father in the household, then there's a lot of development and affirmation, and support and confidence at times that can go missing. Now, this is not the rule. That doesn't mean that there are not exceptions to this, because there's a lot of men, of course, who grew up in single parent households who found their way perfectly fine. But then there are some men who need a different level of support, emotionally, mentally. And if they don't get that type of support, then other things can come in that can try to fill that support, and it may not be healthy for them. So there are circumstances and there are negative consequences when a father is not in the household, for sure. Let's see. Another question I received was, have we left the age of where men are these strong beings who shouldn't show emotion? If so, have we made it okay for them to be vulnerable? Yeah. So, have we? That's the question. Have we? Have we left the age of where men are these strong beings who shouldn't show emotion? If so, have we made it okay for them to be vulnerable? I mean, I would say personally, I do believe that we have entered into an age where men are not seen as the strong beings, for sure. I do think we're in an era of time in the 21st century where a lot of men are not seen as, there are women who have taken those positions as well. However, I would say, have we made it okay for them to be vulnerable? Absolutely not. We absolutely have not created a culture for men to easily open up and talk about what's going on with them emotionally, spiritually, mentally, what's really in their soul and what's really in their heart. I have not seen it. In the few pockets of places where it does happen, is still very rare, very rare. And when I do see men go into vulnerable places or become vulnerable or open up, I've always, more times than not, seen it be end up in judgment. Somebody's going to judge them because they're going to call them weak. They're going to call them gay, or they're going to call them, some derogatory term to relate their vulnerability to weakness. When the truth of the matter is, a man's vulnerability is his strength. It's not his weakness, it's his strength. And so until there's a culture where men understand that their vulnerability, which is their inside of them, that's the internal part of them, their vulnerability, speaking from the heart, speaking from the soul, that part of them is actually their strength and not a weakness. Until that's understood universally in society, we're going to always have a society that is making it virtually impossible for men to open up. That's just what I believe personally. Let's see on another question. How do you communicate what you are needing in your relationship without coming off as needy to your significant other? Ooh, okay. How do you communicate what you are needing in your relationship without coming off as needy to your significant other? So this is probably about a relationship, between two people, and one person feels like they are coming off as needy, and they feel like the other person is going to judge them for being needy, and they're afraid to open up because of it. Because the truth is, if a person is needy, what's happening is when a person is saying I'm needy, what they're saying is I have an emotional hole in my soul that has not been filled. So when a person is needy, they're not needy just to be needy. There's an emotional hole that was never filled, and they're looking for a person or a thing or something to fill that void inside of them so that they don't feel that way anymore. And some people use relationships to do that. Some people do it in an unhealthy way. Some people do it in a healthy way. But in this situation with this question, what I feel like this question is saying is, how can I communicate what I'm needing in my relationship without coming off as needy? I would tell that person, if this person loves you and you're in a relationship with this person, say what's in your heart. Tell them what's really in your heart. If it's really in your heart to say that, and that's the truth, and that's the authentic part of you, and that's really how you feel, tell them what's really in your heart. And if they love you, and if they care for you in any way, and have any emotional maturity about themselves, they will honor you for that. They will try to protect you and cover you for that, and will not judge you for opening up to them. And I will say this about that as well. No one person in a relationship can feel the void of your soul. That's not their job. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's in a marriage, a long-term relationship, a short-term relationship. That person cannot feel the void of your soul. For a man or for a woman, it's impossible. This is a spiritual place inside of you that God put there, number one. And another human being doesn't have the capacity to feel something like that. Even though we try to demand it out of other human beings, it's impossible. They cannot feel that void of your soul because it's a spiritual domain inside of you that can only be filled by the love of God and the love of yourself. So tell that person the truth, open up to them. And if they love you, they'll support you for that. I'm trying to get through at least a certain number of these questions because I know I can't get through all of them in this episode. I'm just going to do a few more. This is another one. Another person sent me a question. He says, am I good enough or good enough for what it is I'm asking? Now, I'm not clear about exactly what he's asking me about specifically. What is he good enough for? But because this question has come from a man, I'm going to be clear because I can read through the words and see what's going on. Most men, they perform as a way of covering up not feeling good enough. Performance is a cover up sometimes, being a workaholic or competing for the most money or the most this or the highest position or the biggest car. It just never ends. The materialistic things people go after. And a lot of times that is a surface defense mechanism for a deep well of insecurity. And so this particular guy who sent me this, he says, am I good enough or good enough for what it is I'm asking? I don't know exactly what he's speaking of, but I would say for sure most men or a lot of men for sure have a place inside of them that says, man, am I good enough? Am I good enough for this? Am I good enough for that? And when you have back to my 10 keys that I mentioned earlier, those questions are not as harmful in your mind. When you have the support system, when you have that confidence, when you have that person pushing you into your greatness, all of those things, you don't sit around wondering, am I good enough all day? You know that you have what it takes. Here's another question from someone else. I'm in a relationship. If I'm providing for my woman, but not giving a woman an allowance, paying for her living, or any big financial things like weekly gifts, etc., am I not being a good man to her? So this, like I said earlier, if one person asks a question, there's probably thousands of other people who want to know the answer to that question. And so this man is asking a question. He's saying, if I'm in a relationship with a woman, but not giving her an allowance, not paying for her living expenses, and not making any big financial purchases for her, taking care of her, am I not being a good man to her? And so a lot of men struggle in this area of the financial inadequacy. This is a huge area in society today. Can I get a date? Can I be in a marriage? Can I support her? Will she love me if I don't make six figures? Or, do I live up to her expectations? If I'm not buying her a new car, or I don't make as much money as she does, or these things are external. They're in my opinion, these things are detrimental to the purity of relationships. I think these things are detrimental to the purity of a relationship, because the truth is, in the soul of a human being, none of those external financial materialistic things support the healing, the wholeness of a person. None of those things really do. At the end of the day, when a person is lying on their deathbed, nobody's counting up how many cars they have, how much money they have in the bank, and, how many houses they have. That person is looking for the love, support, and affirmation and validation of the people that they love. So that's, I want people to keep that in mind. So if you're basing off, this equality thing in a relationship based on all upon money, it can't all be about money. I understand money is important. Money answers all things. We need money, yes. But in relation to this question, this man is asking, am I not being a good man to her? There's a 90% chance that you probably are being a good man to her, even if you can't buy her all of those things. That's my opinion. You can give your opinion. That's my opinion. Let's see. We'll do a few more questions. All right. Here's one. If I don't win the fist fight, am I man enough? Guys, listen. I'm not going to get into the recent things and the headlines and all that stuff. I'm not going to get into that type of stuff. But winning a fist fight does not make you man or not man. Defending your woman and you're defending your significant other, obviously, of course, you want to defend that person, be there for that person, support that person. But there's a wisdom and a timing, you should be appropriate in the timing and the wisdom of how you do things. And winning the fist fight is not the way to do that. I'm just going to say that. Winning the fist fight is not the way to do that. Are there times when that may be an exception to that? Yes. However, the rule, that's a rarity, but the rule is no. And if she or anybody is basing your manhood or your value in the relationship based on a fist fight, I would question that person's love for you and value for you. You really want to question and look at their relationship and see what you feel for that person is the same coming back to you. Is it being reciprocated? So I'll leave that one right there. Woo, I got a good one, guys. Here's another one. How much weakness am I allowed to show to my woman in a marriage? Whoa. Okay. This is big. This is a big one. How much weakness am I allowed to show my woman in a marriage? Whew, okay. I had to take a little deep breath on that one because this thing there's a lot of repressed emotional energy attached to this question, because when a man has to question how much emotion is he allowed to show, this proves why we have to talk about this subject of vulnerability in manhood, because men have so much, repressed energy, emotion, anger, brokenness, wound, pain. This stuff is just sitting and just buried and just stuffed down on the inside of us. And people, we gotta open up these conversations, and men have to do the work, because men are dying of heart attacks and coming up with rare cancers, and relationships are being broken and lives are being broken. Men are ending up in prison and losing it mentally, based on not understanding who they are on the inside and being able to adequately heal their own souls. And so you're in a marriage with somebody and you're not even sure if you can open up to them. And this is major, because I believe that there are probably thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in relationships, marriages, companionships, whatever it is. And they are afraid to open up to that person that they're sleeping in the bed with every night. They're laying next to this person who they're supposed to 100% trust with their lives. And they don't even know if they are allowed to open up and show any weakness. And guys, nobody's strong. Nobody's strong all the time. Nobody is strong all of the time. It's impossible. And so that's an interesting question. I'll leave that one there. All right, let's see. I want to jump down to, I'm seeing a few others. This is another man. He's asking, how do we deal with lust and temptation? Is without question, it's every man's battle. I would say for sure that's another episode. I would say that's another class. That's another, seminar. That's another group, so to speak. When you start talking about lust, temptation, sex, sexuality, and all of those things, I would love to jump into that subject at a later date and jump into the depths of that subject later on. But for sure, every man has to find a place of, I will say this, every man has to find a place of healing in his own soul, so that he can master whatever lust or temptation that he's experiencing. And what I mean by that is you finding a place of healing inside of your own soul will cause you to be able to manage and make better decisions, so that you're not making horrible decisions when it comes down to lust and temptation. Because at the end of the day, these are just basically decisions that we make. We can choose to say yes to that, or we can just choose to say no. The temptation is not going to go away. The attraction may not go away. The lust may not go away, but you for sure can make a decision in that moment. Is this a wise decision or not? And that decision is in your hand. That decision is all yours. It's nobody else's. And so healing your own soul and becoming more mature in the healing of your own soul will allow you the space and the capacity to manage the decisions that you're making when it comes down to lust and temptation and sex and things like that. And I'll leave that one there. I'm going to do one more question and then we'll stop. So on this last question, I got some crazy questions in here, man. Okay. Okay. And this will be my last question I'll go over. Why don't men want to discuss some of their past traumas and instead hold it in. I feel like 75% of guys do this. And it's so true, guys. It kind of goes back to some of my 10 keys that I mentioned earlier, things that a man needs. Men are taught from childhood that men don't cry. Men don't open up. That's weakness. And so when that is programmed in a man's mind from childhood, that becomes a part of your mental vocabulary and structure and way of being. And why don't men want to discuss some of their past traumas and hold it in? Why? The truth is because we're afraid. We're afraid to be judged. We're afraid that people won't see us the same way. We're afraid of being condemned. We're afraid that it will change our self-worth, our self-outlook. We're afraid. It's nothing but fear. And some men would rather die than talk about their past traumas. You know, they say, I'll just take it to the grave. And literally that is what it's doing to your soul. It's slowly eating at you mentally, emotionally, spiritually over years until it finally results in a sickness in your body. And then that thing just eats away at you until the end. And it definitely, guys, it shouldn't be that way. We have to find a place where we find healing. And I really believe that if we're courageous enough to have this conversation openly and implement some of those keys that I mentioned earlier in this conversation today, I believe that we can find healing. I really do. It's not going to happen overnight. The culture that we live in is not going to change overnight. But when there's influence, people that influence people's minds, the moment they say they're going to do something, people follow. And I say that to say the moment we make this conversation and this subject matter popular, so to speak, that's when people will follow. I really believe that. So, and I really believe that's God's will for all of us, to find that type of healing. So I'm going to just leave with this prayer of affirmation. This is my prayer for all of us today. And it's the same prayer I prayed before. And this prayer says, I am not my past. My past was only the journey to get me to this state of my maturity. I won't allow my brokenness, pain, wounds, or regrets to hold me back from my true voice being heard. I won't retreat or hide in loneliness and pain. I will take my place as the man God called me to be. I will give every gift, talent, and tool gifted to me by God to be used. I'm more than capable of rising above the storm, the circumstance, the hindrance that comes to hold me back from my true identity. I give myself permission to live the life my soul deserves. I'm free. Daily, I surrender my strength and take on God's strength. I simply surrender. That's my prayer for you today. I want to thank you guys for joining me today in this episode of Champion of Your Soul. Thank you guys for watching Champion of Your Soul with us today. If you want to do me a favor, just click the subscribe button and notification bell, and I'll see you guys next time.